and welcome to the Empower Hour. I'm Heike Fallon, and I am super excited about today's topic. We are talking about how the space around you has an impact on your well-being. And actually, it has an impact on how your brain functions, how your body is, your physical health, even, and so much more. And I got Tara Kirkland with me today, who is a professional organizer, and she shares with us super great strategies on how to get started, how to sustain, and also really about it's more than having a pretty looking cabinet. It's not about that. Yes, that looks good too. And you might have a guest coming and they can go, wow, but it's really more than that. Having an organized space, organized house where things have a specific place has a tremendous impact on all areas of our life. So we talk about all of that in this next hour. So let's welcome Tara. And I'm super excited you're here because not that you just organized, because you're a professional organizer, so you're organized, but what I love about you, you're adventurous. You like totally out there in the uncertainty, and yet though you're so organized, structured, and all that. So I'm super excited to talk to you today. And I kind of have a little thing for like where are they now kind of stories and how people got to where they are now. And I mean, it's not like you sat there, had a coffee, and decided I'm a professional organizer. So I would love to hear how you got there. Like what was that was like the wow, this is where my passion is.
Yeah. Well, great. First of all, thank you for having me because I also equally love what you do and find you incredibly adventurous. So it's a good match that way. I feel equally inspired by you and your lifestyle and what you do. So it's a good match to be on the show with you today. So yes, how I got here. You're right. I've always been organized. I've loved it since I was a small child. But I never, ever, ever thought it was a skill. I thought everybody was that way. So I was like, okay, this is just what I do. And it wasn't until COVID time, when we were in lockdown and we all had that time at home where I was like, I finally have time to go through all my drawers, everything. And it energized me. So I always think, I don't even know who said it. I want to say maybe Deepak Chopra said, true energy is effortless. And so I felt like something that energizes me has to be the right direction of my passion. So then my next question was, well, can I do this for other people? And I think I've been doing it my whole life. So it was just a matter of making it more of like an organized business and deciding to move forward and actually do it. And I just haven't looked back. So I launched in 2020 during COVID and just created the structure for my business and then started working in people's homes, and I am having a blast. It's really fun.
That's like one good thing that came out of COVID, right?
I know.
Yeah, it was a tough time, no doubt. And but this one for you was actually a nice, good transition. Now, what was it though when you say energized? Because I really want to dig already deep in.
Okay.
I think this is so good. What was it that energized you? Because I'm like a very organized person. Don't look at my desk right now, but
generally Zoom camera up.
Generally speaking, I like it organized and structured, but I don't think about like, oh, it's energizing me, but I do feel better when it's done. And so what is it that you felt there?
That's a good question. I think it's something for me that forces me to be in the present moment. And so I feel like whenever we can do that, in whatever ways we find to do that, whether it's exercise or through a job or through an activity, like for me, I'm focused on the task at hand. So it feels very freeing and peaceful. And I'm not one to like have a lot of stuff that doesn't make me feel complete or anything. So I think just constantly like weeding out makes me feel freer to and helps my clients. So I get the energy from watching them feel the same thing of just feeling freer to create more space for things to come into our lives.
Yes, actually, you said a lot of good stuff there, but what stuck out to me is like, first of all, being present and mindful.
Mhm.
That is something I haven't really thought about. Like when I'm cleaning up, I'm thinking of the end product.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like
That's why you need
I
me.
want it cleaned up and organized, but actually the process of doing that, being
Mhm.
mindful in that moment, how that and we know and I teach a lot of mindfulness, but actually integrating the mindfulness in organizing, I think
Yeah.
that is like awesome. I already learned something.
Yay.
And that's awesome. And but also like you said, and I've had lots of clients as well that, when they start organizing and getting rid of clutter, that they feel the weight comes off their shoulders. They feel just like, yeah, like you said, freeing. And
Mhm.
that just, and it could be that they hadn't really realized how much it weighted them down over time, and then they do it, and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done that like a couple of years ago, right?
Absolutely. And then they really don't end up missing the stuff. And if something is really important to them, then of course we keep it. We find a way to honor it or store it in a way that's not overwhelming and create and cluttering up someone's space. So I feel like your home is a direct reflection of how you feel in your life. So that makes sense to feel weighed down by the stuff. And so many of us don't even think about, like, it's not even a conscious thought about, like, oh, should I go through my house? They don't even realize it. I mean, sometimes I even do this when I go through and I'm clearing out a drawer and I'm like, what? You don't realize how much stuff you accumulate. You have to stop and kind of go through each. It's a consistency issue to maintain, but it's something that we don't always think about how it affects us, but it really, there is a direct reflection, as you would know from like brain science and stuff. The how you feel directly affects like your mental clarity and just how you feel in your life.
Yeah, actually, I want to share that, and that's why I'm so excited you're here today, because I coach people to, get coping with their stress and their overwhelm and fatigue, and really getting their health up to par and to
Mhm.
perform better. And it's not just as it's been kind of brain, body, mind, it's actually brain, body, space. I believe it's your environment, because it's what, however our environment is, yes, it reflects us, as you said, our how we are, how we feel might be reflected in our space, but it's also our space around us impacts our brain, our body. And when I'm saying space, I'm also talking not just the physical space, but also relationships, community,
Yeah.
everything that comes with it. So I truly believe that the physical space in general, our environment, our community, all that matters to our well-being. And I know for you, it's not just getting organized, but as you say, it's the head, it's like you're organizing head, heart, and home. So it's not
Exactly.
just the physical space home. Can
Yeah.
you share a little bit more where that connection is really important to you?
Yeah, I feel like just as you're saying, just it's just how we move through our life. And whether it's mindset or space or relationships, that's why I named my business TK Lifestyle, because it wasn't just about organizing. It was about what kind of lifestyle do you want to have and what's weighing you down. And that can mean a million things.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I'll use inspirational quotes to kind of relate that back to organizing. But again, it really comes back to lifestyle and how we want to maximize our time here and what we want to spend our time doing. And so it's to me, it's, yeah, like you said, all related. It's all part of the same thing. I just do it in the organizing fashion. Some people do it with exercise or stress reduction and brain function, like for you. And I feel like there's so many aspects to it, and whatever resonates with a certain person too. Like I feel like people choose different modalities based on
Yeah.
like what will resonate with them in their life, and they're like, and then they start to see it in their whole life. That connects to that, and that connects to that. And before you know it, it's all connected.
It is totally all connected, because
Connected.
if we want to approach it, as I always say, we need all angles. And
Exactly.
that's why I'm oftentimes like, it's not just one you have to bring in. If you're, if you're working on your health and your house isn't organized to a level where it serves you, you need to take action there, right? And vice
Exactly.
versa. If your exercise is neglected, then you might need to go there. So whatever it is, we have to approach it from multiple different angles. Now, I do want to know though, because you do travel and you're adventurous, and which is so important for brain health, right? To the novelty, exploring, it helps with our creativity, decision making, so many different things, well-being, happiness, because all the exploring, and especially doing it together with others like family or friends, has such an impact on our happiness because of the experience that stay with us.
Yeah.
And I know you do a lot of that, a lot of fun stuff.
I
So
do.
you do. And how does that affect though you as an organizer, and you how do you bring that in? Because as an organizer, I'm like, that's very structured, it's very certain for the brain. There's a certain, like, but adventurous is like this uncertainty, the creativity. So where does that come in?
That is such a good question, Heike. Okay, I'm going to think about that one. I think, well, first of all, yes, you nailed it. I always say there are no places I would not go. I mean, maybe if they're not safe, but I really would. I love exploring new places. I think it comes down to just being fascinated. I'm just fascinated with people, fascinated by other cultures. Like I love just seeing how people live, whether it be in their homes as an organizer or out in the world traveling. Like, it's just very, it sparks like a joy in me that that I will carry as long as I possibly can. And it's fun because I've now starting to play around with using some of my organizing skills for travel, because I have not been a great packer in the past. I'm kind of like, maybe I need this. And I was like, I'm actually not even taking my own advice. Like, don't do the what ifs, choose what you want, just kind of paring it down. But so I'm crossing over in that way of trying to see how I can bring some of these tips into traveling and adventure. But I also think you asked about like being free. I feel like I think about this in a home too, but I think there's a certain amount one of my teachers once said freedom within the form. So you have like a form, and then you've got to have some freedom to move around within that form. Without form, you're kind of just all over the place, right? So you create the form, then you have the freedom within the form. So I kind of like that with travel. Like, you create a little bit of form, when you're going, when you're coming back, you know where you're staying most of the time. When I was younger, I just winged it, in hostels and whatnot. But at this point, I know where I'm staying, and you have I like to have a couple of things planned, and then you have to leave that space to let the adventure happen and meet new people and expect the unexpected and just enjoy the adventure.
So how do you bring that into, I'm pretty sure you do somehow bring that into when you help your clients?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the same I know we get caught up in like Instagram feeds and everything looking perfect, but I think what I try to tell my clients is when I'm with them is that, how do you live? What is your lifestyle? So let's
Oh, I
find
love that.
that you need in this form that we'll create for you. So I don't want it to be so rigid where they feel like they can't relax in their home. I'm like, people always say, oh, keep your countertops clean. But if you use the blender every day, the juicer, the whatever it is every day, it might want to be on the counter, and that's okay. Like, we have a trampoline in our backyard. My kids are, my kids' ages, they're now teenagers. They don't use it as much, but I'm like, I'm going to have the trampoline because understanding your priorities and how you live, that's the only space it could go. We don't have a big backyard. It's what I see, but it's reflective of where I am in my life. So I think just bringing it back to understanding each family situation and where you are in your life and what's going to bring you joy and clarity and calm and less overwhelm is kind of where I start with anybody. So no two people are the same depending on how they live and what kind of family they have and what kind of house they have and whatever that looks like.
Oh, so good, so good. Because it's all about, right, embracing who you are. And oftentimes, I know that from, working with my clients, they failed in the past because they tried to implement something that somebody else is doing and works for somebody else. And then they try it and it doesn't work. And
Exactly.
they're like, I've tried that and it didn't work. Well, did you tailor it for your situation, for who you are? And embracing that, as you just said, is a key for sustainability, I believe.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
because otherwise it's like they try and fail, they try and fail. And it's not, anything in life, but also, when somebody tried to get something organized, but as you said, if that blender is constantly out, at some point you're not putting it in and out, in and out, in and out. It will be there, and then you may not have the structure for it. So would you say that is like the first step, is really about identifying who you are and what needs you have around your space?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like to work in, that's why I like working one-on-one with my clients, because I want to teach them to
Yeah.
be able to create the systems, or we create the systems together, and then they can maintain it. So I love when I talk to a client months later and they're like, guess what? My pantry or this looks exactly the same from when you left, because we understand the system. So wait, what was the question you had? You
I was
said,
number one, but you go into the next one that I want to ask is,
all
how do
right.
we sustain, right? Like that would be a foundation to be even possible to sustain an organized space, right? Would be making sure we're embracing who we are and identifying, and then, but what else do I need to sustain?
Yeah.
Clearly, your clients do, but what do you suggest for people to really sustain a
Yeah.
somewhat organized space?
Well, I think so first of all, like creating a place for everything, which I know sounds so cliche, but it's true. So you have like sometimes my husband can be a little bit of a stuffer, like he finds an empty space and he'll just stuff something, and I'll find it and I'll be like, what's this? And I was like, do you need a stuffing space? Like I'll create one for you. So
Oh,
what
I love that.
right? So if he needs just an empty nook somewhere where he's like, I'm just going to stuff this here, because inevitably you see patterns. Like we don't want to, we can teach people, like I teach the kids, my kids have different personalities, um, and they follow it, but I also have to have, again, a little bit of flexibility with, my daughter, who maybe isn't as, she's clean, but she's a little messy. So I'm like, okay, then your room can be that way because that's your space. But then you have to take your laundry and put it in your room. But then what you do in your room, you can
Yeah.
have the freedom there. So I understand the flexibility part of it. So I think creating a space for everything. And it's even like if you're, always I don't know, having a donation pile so things don't pile up in a chair, like, oh, I'm going to donate that. It's like, well, then create something maybe in your garage or in the laundry room, wherever you want to have something where you can dump stuff. It's just when we have piles of things, or people who return things a lot, or if around the holidays, like designate a spot where you're going to put all the gifts that you're buying, so it just doesn't start to take over other areas. So creating spaces for everything. And sometimes I call them boundaries. So if you have a boundary in your pantry or in your refrigerator, once that boundary starts to overflow, it's time to thin it out. So you've got to kind of make sure that you are staying up on keeping that boundary. And if that boundary is getting bigger and you're like, I actually am going to have this more stuff all the time, then it's time to like, okay, let me just create a little bit more space for this one area. So then I'm not constantly overflowing. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's just
it makes sense. So really the awareness of when is it starting to clutter up, or when is it the space that was organized previously not fitting? And I can relate to that, because oftentimes, and it's a funny thing that happened, that happens where I'm going like, somehow this is not organized anymore. And it's because things accumulated, because it's really a dynamic process. It's not a steady thing, because new things come in, or all of a sudden the blender got more important in our household than it was before, right? And it ended up on the countertop, which I'm not happy with, but it's used every day. So there's no point in moving it in and out of a cabinet. But what I realized is then when I am aware of that it gets too full, then and I don't know, is that what you do? But I literally tend to just pull it all out. And
Exactly.
then I
Yeah.
put it back in, and then it always feels like that made so much more sense. And actually, I have to say, one thing I learned from you, from one of your posts was, that was my last kitchen reorganization I did, was you posted and said, think of the things that you use most as far as putting in that drawer, for example, or in that cabinet, of like thinking really of the use of the items and putting them in those type of places. So that is like a structure to how to organize it better.
Like I call it prime real estate.
Oh,
So
okay. Prime real estate. Yes, you said that.
yeah. So I mean, it depends on me, depends on the size of someone's kitchen too. I always say, like, what most people are going to be able to fit what they use on a daily basis in their kitchen. Maybe they can't put everything they have, and if they feel like they use things seasonally, then we would find a place either like in a bin in the garage or in your pantry up high on a shelf, something so you can access it when you need it, and clearly labeled so you know you have it, you don't end up buying like a duplicate of something. But yeah, you typically like pulling everything out, going through it, and then putting it back in is it's a very good exercise. I mean, a lot of people, if you don't have things in the right places, then they will buy 2 or 3 of those items. Like I find lots of potato peelers and random things that they just, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had this. I couldn't find it. So it's keeping like items together is really important in that, in creating the system too, of knowing what you have, and then not buying it.
That is like the worst thing in my garage, that I'm like, I know I have it. If I would just know where.
Exactly. That would be a good thing. Yeah. I had this
And
thing where I was looking for like shoelaces, and I saved a pair, and I usually don't, but I end up needing these white shoelaces. And I was like, I was almost too, where did I put the shoelaces? I'm like, okay, as an organizer, I would have put them in my sock drawer. And I did a quick look and I didn't find them. And then I said to my husband, I'm like, I can't find those shoelaces, but I'm sure I kept them. And I said, I think they're in my sock drawer. I went and looked again, and sure enough, they were there. And I was like, yes. Like we usually can find things if we're kind of consistent. You keep them with the category: shoes, socks.
yeah,
Okay, I'll put them in my sock drawer, right?
yeah, yeah,
Rather than just stuffing them in some drawer randomly in the house.
yeah. So, and I know oftentimes it's before and after, it looks so pretty. And I've taken pictures myself of the stuff I've done, but like you use a lot of times, which I think looks so pretty, like different containers and different things, and it looks really pretty.
Yeah.
But it's more than pretty, right? I mean, compared to, like, I'm using kitchen right now, but like, when things are just in there, but then when you have boxes, it's more than looking pretty. I mean, it looks pretty, but
yeah, the boxes create the boundary that I was referring to.
oh, okay. Yes.
So you have whatever pasta or whatever however people kind of think, like, oh, I'm going to make dinner, what do I have? Or I'm going to make my grocery list, what do I have? So it's just putting them in categories in your pantry, and you don't always need the containers if you could kind of maintain the boundary. But the problem is then people start, it spills over into other sections, and then you just start looking for an empty space to shove something. So it's like you have your snacks and your pastas and your grains and your treats and your dog food and whatever it is, everybody knows where it is. So that definitely helps, not only look nice, but because again, looking nice kind of helps create that feeling. Like we don't want to, I don't want to have to encourage people to go and buy expensive products. Sometimes we grab things from that they already have, like shoe boxes or repurposed baskets somebody already has in their house or something, or we use less expensive options that we can find pretty much anywhere, Amazon, Target, dollar store, and just creating the boundaries is what keeps the system in place.
I love that. And it's just like you mentioned, sustainability, right? When you have the boundary, visually see it, because that's the box for the pasta. Yep. You can't shove it on the side, because once you shove too many things in between, then the chaos starts again.
Yeah. And then so a lot of people, like, they'll say, well, I go to Costco and I have I can't fit all of it there. And so then we would create what I call it's called a backstock section. So Then I teach them, well, you shop from your pantry first. And if you don't have it, then you shop from the back stock. And then if it's not in the back stock, then you put it on your list to buy. So you're always kind of moving it from those categories into, where it's going to go. It's going to go into your, to use and cook. But if you have like pasta all the time and you want to go get a value from Costco, then just create the back stock. So then the actual area isn't like stuffed with all this pasta, but then they have to remember they have back stock, which is just a habit you just pretty much can catch on to pretty quickly. I mean, I teach my kids how to do that with with anything. I'm like, once you take it from the back stock and you put it into the main area, then it needs to go on the list because I need to replace my back stock item and put it on the list. So we're never out of that thing.
Don't leave the empty box there because I won't know.
Exactly. That has happened before. So I will say it's
household, you're like, oh, we have, whatever. Oh, no, it's an empty box. I did not know.
You're like, we're not getting far with this empty box. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it comes down to systems that you teach, right? You teach your clients different systems and different strategies to create really the habit, not to just do it once, but actually to sustain that environment and help them really to embrace themselves, sustain that, and even when new stuff comes along, how to manage all that. Now, big part of it when we think again, brain science, is, and I know you mentioned that as well. It takes less energy then for the brain, which actually makes everything feel less stressed. So I know your clients are excited, like after a month, yay, it looks the same. But have you also gotten the feedback they, feel less stressed because it makes them happy now to look at the stuff and they find everything?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the biggest word that's used when I talk to people is overwhelmed. So they feel overwhelmed because they don't know where to start. So it is once you get, whether it's, me working with them or them trying to do this on their own, it's like once the system's created, then you're just maintaining it. It's like starting an exercise program from scratch. The first time you're like, I can hardly walk a mile. And then you work up to it and you build that muscle and then you can sustain it at that pace. So I feel like once the systems are in place, yes, they feel less overwhelmed for sure. And it's just less, you don't have to even use your brain energy to think about it anymore because it becomes a habit. It's just like driving a car. This is what you do. And this is how it works in your home. Like even in a closet, it's like, I don't buy any more hangers in my closet. If I buy something has to go.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah.
One in, one out. So you just, you try to like develop systems that just are kind of brainless. So you don't have to use. You have to think about what you're going to get rid of, but it just is, you're doing it in smaller ways. So it just doesn't feel like this.
This overwhelm where you don't even know where to get started.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what would your suggestion be when somebody sits there completely overwhelmed? What would you suggest to get started?
I would say start with something easy.
Okay.
And pick one drawer, just one drawer. That's good. Like a junk drawer. I don't know if that would be easy for somebody, or your sock drawer. You clean out your bathroom, all those little sample things that you get, check for expiration dates. Like I would just, even in your pantry, a pantry can be overwhelming for people. So you just pick one category. Like I'm just going to go through my canned goods and do I use these? Can I donate them? Are they expired? Can I find something I can make for dinner with them that I didn't even know I had these in here? So I would say start small and just focus on one drawer, one category.
And then celebrate yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Release and got the one done.
That's such a good point, Heike, because I'm also like, I love, you want to do it when you kind of know when you have like surges of energy throughout the day. So it's like also good to kind of be aware of that. You're like, you maybe don't want to do that at 10 o'clock at night when it's bedtime. You're like, oh, I'm going to pull everything out of this drawer. And then it's just, you feel defeated. So mindset and all of that just all rolls back into the same thing of what we're saying of like, put on a song that you just like love, feel good. And then you're like, I'm gonna do this drawer. Yeah, I'm gonna get this done. And then do it. I mean, there's so many free resources on Instagram through my site or my page and others that, or you could even probably Google, like, how do I clean out a blah, blah, blah. So it's, if somebody needs that extra assistance, but do it from a good place, have a good intention behind, like, I'm going to do this because I'm going to start this. It doesn't need to finish it. I'm going to start this today and understand like the why behind why you're doing it.
Yeah, having fun with it, and again, utilizing what the brain does, right? It gives us that neurochemical release, which helps us to be motivated, feel good about ourselves, more energized, and all of the above. So what is the room that most people struggle with, or your clients that you've seen? Is it the kitchen, the garage? What is usually the room in the house that seems to be, or the car? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't hear the car very often, but
Okay.
I'm sure maybe people, I'm sure people use their car sometimes as like a second house or something. But I would say for me, I get the most calls for kitchens and pantries. A lot of times the pantries can be overwhelming because you brought this up before, and sometimes closets and definitely garages. I would say, I mean, I guess that's kind of the whole house here, but it's just the like paperworks sometimes.
Oh, yes.
So I think it's just I think it's easier for people when they have you mentioned the stuff coming in, like there's always clothes, like especially for kids, they're growing out of clothes and they're, or we're buying something, or they're change of seasons, and you put sweaters and now you've got some stuff to get rid of. But it's the stuff that's constantly coming in and people staying on top of that. So typically that's food items, like perishable food items, whether it's their pantry or their fridge. Not so much like the kitchen. Once you get your stuff set in your kitchen, like your utensils and your pots and your pans, we don't, buy as many of those things on a regular basis, but food we do. So pantry is a big one. I would say that would be my number one.
Okay. And now, I don't know if you feel like that, but I feel sometimes like that. It's Groundhog Day. I'm like, I just cleaned up the kitchen, made it look good and organized, and, having a family, obviously. Now it's like, I just did this. And then you start it over again. And then you're like, okay, I'm tired.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely can be a challenge. I mean, one of the things that helps me, just because again, I don't want to take the brain space during my week, is meal planning. So I figure out on Sunday, ask the kids, what do you want to eat? Like, give me ideas, or I'm going to make the same thing I make all the time. Because I could eat the same thing all the time. It doesn't matter. But if they don't give me ideas, I'm like, sorry, I get to choose. So, they'll throw in their thoughts and I'll make my list and I'll shop for Monday through Sunday through Thursday, Monday through Friday-ish. And then usually by the end of the week, so it keeps my refrigerator from getting overflow, like it doesn't overflow, because by the end of the week, it's almost empty. And then I do it again for the next week. So it just takes the thought of like what I'm going to cook for dinner. I need to know when they want lunches. Sometimes they still bring lunch to school. They eat at the cafeteria. I have a daughter in college. I know you have a couple off to college too. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have so much more time.
No, I have to do more. Before they split the dishwasher. Now I'm like, now I have to do the dishwasher too, because we don't have enough people in the household in the rotation.
But there are less people using the dishes.
That's true. That's true. But I think what you just said too is it's all about the planning, and it's really more than just the organizing. It's really the lifestyle. Like you said, it's because the planning for the meals, or the setting the boundaries, and all of those things. It's not just the one area. It's really about really looking at a bigger picture in order to sustain and enjoy it. So you have to really make a shift in also planning, priorities, right? what's
Yeah.
important, right? If it's important to me to cook every day, then, you know, making a meal plan, or you know, just in general too, like you know, that whole, like, what is that? I read the book, The Essentialist. I
Yes,
have to
I've
look.
read that
Yeah,
too. With Greg
yeah, because
McKeown.
like you
Yeah.
said too, is like, you know, it's also oftentimes we have too much, right? Which is part of lifestyle too, right? Like we go out and buy, and I love that strategy you have. Like, if I only have so many hangers, that cuts down how much is going to actually be in there. So it's really about changing, um not just the space, but really implementing lots of strategies from other areas of life, because it just goes together. There's no
Yeah.
other way.
Yeah, yeah. And before you know it, it becomes, a habit. And we know when you have a habit, like we don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it. You do it. And then it's always good to obviously assess, like, is this working for me? Is this helpful? Do I, do I like it? Like a lot of people, I haven't done this yet. I would say I'm sort of a capsule wardrobe plus, but people are really into the capsule wardrobes, which means you just have, let's say 5 pairs of bottoms and then 10 tops, and they all kind of mix
Yeah,
together. So you just, again, you don't have to think too much. You get up, you pull, whatever top you feel like wearing and whatever bottom they're going to match, and you throw that on and you go. So it's just taking all that extra stuff that sometimes we don't even realize. And then you're like, oh, it's like 2 o'clock. I'm exhausted because we're just using unnecessary brain space.
yeah, yeah,
You
absolutely.
know that?
I have another question. And we kind of touched on already a little bit on, we're, you know, the space is a community, right? The house, multiple people living in, not everybody is on the same kind of bandwagon necessarily.
Yep. Yep.
Especially the teenagers, but even spouses, you might have a different definition of what's organized, or you know, how somebody might feel comfortable certain ways, and other people might feel more comfortable if it's more cleaned up, and other people more don't mind when it's messy. It doesn't affect them as much.
Yeah.
How do we how do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where it comes down to, like, knowing. I use my daughter as an example because it truly does not bother her. She's a very chill personality. Like, she could have clothes all over her floor. They're clean. And I'll just walk in her room and I'm like, do you want to, put this stuff away? And she's like, no, I'm good. Like, and I'm like, but I think she really is good. Like, I think it just doesn't bother her. At this point in her life, it doesn't bother her. So
It
I
has
think,
not affected other areas of life, right? Because I think that's where it is important, right? When it may affect, because the space affect us, as we said earlier, affect how we are, and it reflects how we feel sometimes. So if we're still otherwise structured, organized, and get everything done, that's good. But if it doesn't, then, you know, we might have to change it.
100%. That's what I talked to her about that, because it's hard for me to understand that it wouldn't be okay, with her. But she went off to college and I said, you're going to have a roommate, you're going to have to figure it out. And then she kept everything clean because she understood that she was sharing the space with another person and wanted to be respectful. So I wasn't, I guess, for her lack of, she can do it and it just doesn't bother her, but she's aware enough in a family dynamic, like she wouldn't do that downstairs, leave all her stuff everywhere, because that affects other people.
So you had rules in the house, like certain common space, everybody has to kind of play by the rules, and the rules are set.
Yeah, I mean, they would come home and we have like a little mud room and we come through the garage, and I had like a shoe basket for everybody, but nobody was putting their shoes there. And I was like, okay, everybody, is this system not working? And they're like, no, because I said, tell me why. They said, because when we come in the door, we walk straight into the house and we'd have to like go behind the door and walk in. I was like, okay. So I just created another space behind the couch, which is, you kind of can't really see. We have a little hallway and we had a bench. So I was like, okay, well, what if you put they dump their backpacks there? And it doesn't bother me. But if I ever like have people over or something, I'll put the backpacks away, or they will, or the shoes and stuff. But again, it just goes with, I can be flexible in that way. It doesn't mean you can just put your stuff anywhere in the house because it's not convenient. Then let's create something else that's going to work for you. So I think it just all comes down to, and getting them kind of on board as well, like asking them what works for you. How can we make this work? Because we all live together. So let's figure out a way that we can all be mindful and respectful of our space.
Which comes back to what we said earlier, right? You have certain boundaries,
Mhm.
and in the boundaries is that creativity, flexibility. And when
Yeah.
when we're living with other people, we need to, yeah, we have our boundaries, but sometimes we need to some of us need to loosen up a little bit more, right? And some need to be tightening up a little bit more to find that common ground and make that space workable for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. The freedom within the form. Yep.
Yeah, and
That's
I love that you I used to, now the kids are older, right? But because I love toys, and when the kids were little, but I always had the one room where I said it's a toy-free room, because I
exactly.
just needed, because I would feel I always have to clean up before I can sit down and relax. And so I had the one space where I said absolutely zero toys, because I need to have, if I'm like done and I'm tired and what have you, I have to have a space where I can just go immediately without having the urge of, cleaning up or doing something. Because I was always like the kind like, okay, I can't sit and relax unless I, put some things away and have some kind of, I need structure.
Same way.
So that was for me back then. It was really nice to know, like, that one room. Hey, if I want to take a break, I can sit down and it's ready to go.
Yes. No, I mirror that as well, because I'm the same way, and I can't relax until it's all done. And so having that extra space, that's a perfect way to deal with the situation for the season of life that you're in. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I love this. So really, this was so much great information. I'm so excited. And it really comes down to the strategies too, which I know you teach. So when clients start with you, it's not just about organizing their pantry or whatever it is, but it's really about learning the strategies, how to sustain that. So how do you start usually? So if I would say, like, I would love to contact you to come and help me, is there like a questionnaire, or how do you figure that out? Like, how do we start?
Yeah. Good question. So I usually start with like a consultation on the phone. I want to understand, like, I said, if someone's doing it on their own, I said, start easy and small. But if someone was hiring me, I'd ask them what their biggest pain point is. Like, what can you just like not stand for one more day? And they'll be like, my pantry. Okay, then we're going to start there. So we always start with one space. And then I just get an understanding of, what's bothering them about it, what works, what doesn't work. And then that just continues when I actually, we usually do like at least a 4-hour session. I used to do shorter sections, but I feel like in order to really make progress, like 4 to 6 hours in one session, to be able to really make an impact in someone's space that they're frustrated with. So I would do that. I would have a consultation, understand what their biggest pain point is, and then explain the process. Like, we're going to understand how you live, and then we're going to edit what you have. We're going to pull everything out. Those kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And then we're going to develop a system of how we put those back in, and then show you how to maintain it.
Oh, I love that. And then it sounds like a lot of clients get back to you with feedback. So there's a follow-up with like how it's going, or is there?
Yeah, I usually touch base and just find out like how the system's working, or many times they have me back for another space. Like, I think one of the biggest things is it takes longer than people think to do a space. So they'd be like, oh, I thought in 2 sessions we'd be able to do my whole house. And I'm like, no, people are surprised by how much stuff they have and what they've accumulated. And it takes a minute to kind of get the new system in place. Now, the maintenance wouldn't be that long if somebody just needs a little bit of, adjustments here and there.
Yeah.
Usually when someone recovers from the first one emotionally, and they're just sort of like, okay, that was a lot. And then they move on to the next space. They're like, okay, I'm ready for my closet now, or I'm ready for the garage. So then we'll go back. So then a lot of times I get the chance to go back and see how, and I'll be like, can I take a peek at the pantry and see how that, so I'll be able to see firsthand how they're doing, or they'll tell me, of course, but that's usually how I know it's working. Either they'll have me back or they'll tell me.
Yeah, and good point, because if it would be all easy and done in like a half an hour,
We do
we
it
all would
ourselves.
be having that all structured and organized, because it does take some time to get a good foundation, setting it all up. And again, the key is creating the systems.
Mhm.
That does take a little more work, a little pre-work, but it's what helps you sustain and helps what really impacts life at the end of the day, because it's not just in the space in the moment. It's, like I said earlier, really a journey, and as you said, a lifestyle
Yeah.
that you have to integrate, and that takes a little bit more pre-work and setup, so to speak. And then that takes sometimes, what did you say, 6 hours? Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly right. And that's where people get overwhelmed because they don't know how to do that part. So that's where hiring a professional organizer, like what you do for people, it's the same thing. Like they don't know where to start and you teach them the skills. So then it's just like, oh, okay, now I can maintain and do these things on my own. It doesn't mean we still don't need accountability and support.
Yeah.
But you're kind of on the rails and you feel like you understand at least what you're supposed to do. It's like someone get a trainer and someone teaches you an exercise routine, and then you're like, oh, now I know I'm supposed to do this and I'm supposed to do this, and and then they can do it on their own, and then they might need, like, I'm getting a little sedentary, I need to do something on top of that. So it just depends on whether or not someone is feel like they could tackle it on their own, or if they need assistance. I also do virtual stuff too, which I have some clients that are not local that I do virtually, and surprisingly, it works pretty well, and it's way more cost effective because they are doing the work themselves, but I'm coaching them from like this. Like, okay, see that behind you? Okay, let me see all your categories, and I get their measurements, and I'll send them emails and stuff. So it's a little trickier, but it's fun, and it has the same satisfaction rate for the clients and for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it works virtually too. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, this was so good. I can't believe I can't do that. I could spend more hours with you.
Oh.
But what is like one absolutely great advice or suggestion you can give anybody who watched all the way to the end?
Yes. Let's see. I think I guess the piece of advice, because I feel like most people are overwhelmed, is start small and understand your intention or your why. And I know we throw that around a lot as a word, but it's so true. Like why do you want to get organized, right? Understanding why and always coming back to that why, and then taking one small step in the direction is the best way. And then before you know it, you've walked a mile.
Fantastic. Awesome. I love this. This was so great. So many great insights. I'm excited you were here today, because it's so inspirational, but the goal is also to really help people to empower themselves. And this was such valuable information, not just for one little space, but actually for the journey of life, really.
Yeah, the journey of life. This is true. It's like it translates to all areas, right? When we think about it, start small, be consistent, maintain, have an intention. You can use that in any area of your life.
Awesome. There will be your information listed below this video. So anybody who wants to reach out to you, you are also on Instagram and Facebook. So all the information will be there if they want to reach out to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I loved it. Thank you so much, Heike. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for watching the Empower Hour. I hope you feel empowered and inspired to implement some of these strategies to really create the life you love and feel the best self again. And so go out, embrace, empower, and enjoy, because that's what it's all about.